Hello, everyone, and welcome to Thoughts. Rafael Nadal does not go the entire clay court season without a Masters 1000s title. He has defeated Novak Djokovic in 3 sets, Rome final. I have thoughts. I come to you from London, England. Let's do this. More on the whole London thing. I will post an update probably tomorrow. Anyway, I want to start by talking about the tournament in general for both Nadal and Djokovic. I thought it was an incredibly productive tournament for both of these guys. I'm going to start with Djokovic. 2 weeks before a major is when you really should be doing your hardest training. It's when you should really be trying to max out and peak physically. And then the week leading up to a tournament, and fighters do this too, it's making sure that you come in 100% rested, 100% healthy, and still maintain 100% sharpness. So in the weeks leading up to a major, in the week before a major rather, just prior to a major, it's going to be a lot of lighter work. You're not going to really be trying to push your body to the limit. 2 weeks before is your last week to really get to your peak physical condition. And the fact that Djokovic was so tested physically throughout this tournament, and the fact that he had terrible scheduling, and the fact that he had to play long, tough, brutal matches that he was able to get through, like the one against Juan Martín del Potro. I know that you might be thinking, ooh, this is a bad thing for Djokovic. The scheduling has been brutal. The long matches are bad. He needs to be ready for the French. What will he ever do? Guess what? This was perfect for Novak Djokovic, in my opinion. This is how he will get in the physical condition. I mean, this is what's going to get him ready for the French. And now he has a week to rest and recover. Not to mention, he played... I was very impressed, let's just say, with Djokovic's ability to fight all the way to the final, given his circumstances, given the long matches and the scheduling, as I mentioned. Not to mention, before I move on to Nadal, that in the second set, Djokovic was able to play winning tennis against Rafa, taking that set 6-4. So, in the grand scheme of things, I thought this was a great tournament for Djokovic. I also think this was a great tournament for Rafa Nadal. And this is obviously less of a hot take, a little bit more obvious than saying that it was a great tournament for Djokovic, but Nadal, in my opinion, really needed to play Djokovic before the French Open. And I said this. Before Rome, before Madrid, prior to the clay court season, I said this. I think that it's not to be understated the mental scarring that Australian Open blowout probably had on Nadal's psyche. And I think we've probably seen it post-Australian Open, that Nadal is a little bit more fragile psychologically than we're used to seeing him. And I feel like that, I think that manifested itself. And I don't think that loss at the Australian Open in the final, when he lost so decisively to Djokovic in straight sets, I don't think that was just immediately washed away. I think it had lasting effects. And in order to get rid of those lasting effects, I think it's very important that Nadal met Djokovic in this final. And he was able to do that. Not to mention, he was able to win it and get that title. And Nadal's a guy who needs confidence. He's not bulletproof in the confidence department, especially at this point in his career. So I thought that this was pretty important for him.
That's true.
Let's get to the match a little bit. I think that everyone can agree, Nadal fans, Djokovic fans, unbiased spectators, I think everyone can agree that these two players are close enough in level that if one is outworking the other, well, whoever's getting outworked has no chance. And certainly that happened right off the bat in this match, in the first set, where Nadal was playing with a lot more energy than Djokovic. Now, I want to talk about the fatigue thing. and I get comments on my videos all the time that kind of bring up the last score line. And I think recently when Federer lost to Thiem, people were asking me, well, do you think that Federer was tired because, he played the long 3-setter against Monfils before, right? And oftentimes, I will never mention the last match unless I see fatigue. Too many people are focused on the score line, and they use that as an excuse, and I hate that word excuse. But when it's incorrect, it's an excuse. When it's correct, it's an explanation, in my opinion. Too many people use the prior score line and how long the prior match was as an excuse for the result in the next match, when sometimes there's no evidence of fatigue whatsoever. And now I'm going to say something that maybe one fan base won't really appreciate, but there was obvious signs of fatigue for Novak Djokovic in this match. And don't worry, I will get to all the things that Nadal did so well and all the improvements that Rafa made here. But a couple of signs of fatigue. Not being able to maintain 100% intensity and 100% focus for long periods of time throughout the entirety of the match. Djokovic was able to turn it on at certain points for small portions of the match, but he was not able to maintain. We saw it in the first set when he went down a break after the first 2 games, where he had kind of trouble getting his body going, trouble getting into the match with the focus, and then I think, lost his fight. Almost kind of threw away the first set. And of course, again, Nadal playing wonderfully in that first set. And then in the second set, Nadal outplays Djokovic, I think, for most of the beginning of the second set. And Djokovic is able to save 4 break points, hang in there. His first serve percentage, I believe, was up around 80%, and his forehand was pretty good. And towards the end of the second set, Djokovic, he got his energy burst. He had his rush. But then in the beginning of the third, again, he can't maintain that focus. He completely loses his focus in the first game of the third set, gets broken right away. So an obvious sign of fatigue is when you can't maintain your intensity for long periods of time. The second sign of fatigue is struggling late in rallies and bailing out of rallies. And Djokovic's drop shot efficiency was terrible. He was going to the drop shot to try to end rallies late in rallies. Often it wasn't the correct shot to play. Often he was just looking for a way out of the rally. And then even when he wasn't going to the drop shot, Djokovic was not good at finishing in this match, because I believe that his preparation towards the end of rallies, even when he got the upper hand, was not sufficient, and he would get lazy on the last shot and he would miss it. Not good finishing from Djokovic, so bad at the end of rallies. And then the third thing is I just think that he looked pretty winded for a good portion. But the third part, a little bit more subjective and a little bit harder for someone like me just watching the match to tell. The first 2 things, obvious signs of fatigue. So I think that played a big part. We'll wait for that motorbike to pass. I think the fatigue played a big part. But also Rafa's improvements. Remember last week I talked about scrambling. When Nadal lost to Dominic Thiem in Monte Carlo, I talked about scrambling and how Nadal isn't winning any points when he has to scramble defensively. That was so much better in this match. The scrambling, he was winning points from positions where he wouldn't be ordinarily expected to win points. And on clay, that's so important. That's such a big part of clay court tennis, because the surface gives you the ability to win points from very defensive positions if you're able to if you have the skill to get back in the point to counterattack, which Nadal does with his forehand down the line when he's at his best, with his defensive backhand slice lob, which he hits so well a bunch of times in this match. So I thought the scrambling was a massive, massive improvement. Second thing has to be the forehand, which against Tsitsipas, Nadal thought was the big difference, and I tend to agree with him. And although this has been a crazy week for me, and I didn't get to watch that match in full, the forehand is really the aggression, I should say, on the forehand is the X factor for Nadal, and it's finally been where it's needed to be for him to be successful in the last couple matches against top players. He never looked rushed on his forehand side. He always looked like he was in the right position, and he was hitting it down the line so well. And we've talked about tactically how important that is against Djokovic, because he can't play really the cross-court forehand to Djokovic backhand. He can't play that rally successfully. It's not a good match. It's just not a good pattern for him. So the forehand down the line is always so important in this matchup, and it was firing in this match. In the second set, at the very end, it wasn't the same. And that should be concerning if you're a Nadal fan. The fact that even with his forehand playing so well for the majority of this entire week, in a pressure situation, it kind of went back to the old tendencies. It's not that he missed too many forehands, it's how he missed them. When Nadal is missing forehands and he's not missing them in an aggressive manner, he's falling backwards, he's hitting heavy topspin, trying to brush up, and he's either netting them or hitting with too much shape and it goes long even though he had tons of topspin, or in the case of set point, he moved back too much and then mistimed it. He was early because he was retreating when he didn't have to, and he was early on the ball. These kind of mistakes are concerning. But scrambling better, forehand better, backhand has been good. And Nadal played, he's gotten better and better throughout this clay court season. He really has. So that's a good sign. Next Monday match analysis will not be tomorrow. It will be a French Open preview as soon as the draw comes out. So I look forward to seeing you then. I hope you enjoyed this. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.